Okay, so there's just over 3 rounds left of the NBL, so let's use their ladder prediction and see where I think the teams are going to end up at the end of the season. So I've just crunched the numbers, and this is where I'm thinking every team is going to end up by the end of the season, and I think it is going to come down to the wire for that first place between the Hawks and the Wildcats. There are definitely a few key games that I'm going to go through shortly, but let's go through where I see everybody right now. And the way that teams are playing, this is hard to. I'm trying to figure out like what could be the other possibilities, and those between 3 and 5, I do think it could switch around a little bit, but I do think the first and second spot is pretty much going to be sealed between these two teams. So I think it can switch around a little bit between like 3 to 6, not really between like Sydney, Melbourne, and then like Phoenix and the Adelaide. I think it's mostly there's a real possibility between Melbourne and Sydney to finish third, but I think the other one will finish fourth, and I don't think Phoenix or the 36ers will catch either of them. And I'm also sorry, Tasmania fans, Brisbane fans, injuries have killed your season. It is nothing personal, it is nothing against either of you. You've just dealing with so many injuries. It's hard to pick you in some of these crucial games, like missing such key players. So the first key matchups is pretty much Sydney versus the Phoenix, and then the Wildcats versus Melbourne. If the Phoenix win this, they have a chance of catching Sydney, but if they lose this, it's pretty much putting Sydney and Melbourne in a tier above them without a chance of catching up. And then this Wildcats and Melbourne game is pretty much going to determine who will be the second place. I do think if the Wildcats win, I don't think Melbourne will be able to catch them like with the rest of the schedule that they have left, which is crazy because if you asked me like a month ago, I would have said Melbourne is easily a top two team and the Wildcats are probably going to fight to get to that fourth spot. But Bryce Cotton is Bryce Cotton, and he's just proving that. And the Wildcats have figured out how to play around him properly. Like the bench is finally scoring. John Rillie is actually trusting players other than Bryce Cotton, which is amazing. And then the next one is definitely this pretty much 3 games like Melbourne versus Tasmania. If Tasmania lose this, I think that really just counts them out. Then the Sydney versus the Wildcats. I think this determines if Sydney can overtake Melbourne because Sydney have two key matchups, like not just this one and not just the Phoenix one. So I guess that's 3. They have, and they're also versing the Hawks, which is pretty much putting them in that fourth spot because I'm finding it hard right now to pick them over either Wildcats or the Hawks. And I think this other one between the Phoenix and the Adelaide also helps determine if Adelaide is 6 or if they have a chance of jumping the Phoenix into that 5th spot. But yeah, pretty much Sydney needs to beat either Melbourne or Perth to get to that 3rd spot. Otherwise, they're sticking at 4th. Melbourne pretty much need to win every single game to stay in contention against like the Wildcats and the Hawks, which I don't think they'll be able to win every single game. And then it's a pretty much a fight for 5th spot. So for and against is going to be vital for the Phoenix and the 36ers. But let me know in the comments, what is everybody else's ladder predictions looking like?